Hello and welcome to Neuro Nomads. We are two expat moms raising neurodiverse kids. And today we're going to talk about back to school. And I'm wearing my rose colored glasses because we need to put those on when we're putting our kids back in school after a long summer. And they're neurodiverse and they don't want to go back to school.
No,
And
they don't.
and it's really hard to not like put something special in your coffee in the morning on those mornings, which I don't do, but I want to sometimes. So I'll take these off so you can take me seriously.
Okay.
I have to um, fix my camera here so I can see you better. So, Dahlia and I have had
Hello.
a long summer,
Yes.
and I had a great summer. We got to do some traveling. And we got to go back to Canada, which was amazing. We hadn't been back in, oh gosh, I think like 4 years.
Wow.
So that was really, really fun. My husband and I were speaking at a summer camp, a family camp, and that was really great for us and our kids. But yeah, Dahlia and I were just saying summertime is a time for healing for these children who really struggle all year long, masking and trying to behave in school. And summertime is a time for them to just chill with no demands and just allow all of their, little body parts and their overstimulation and their cortisol, their fight, flight, or freeze, all of that just to kind of go down to a normal level so that they can get ready to go back to school again. Yeah. So that was my summer. It was a great summer. And
And
we've already
did the kids enjoy? I mean, 4 years
they
is a
enjoyed
long
going back to
time to
Canada.
not go back.
Yeah, they did enjoy it. I think it's always hard to go back to your home country and have all those familiar, places and things kind of flooding back to you. So I think, the emotions were up and down. Some of them did better than others. Like my older one was processing a little bit of grief, on things, how things used to be. And even though they're happy that we're moved all around and everything, and we've gotten a chance to live in England and now in the US, there's always that little hint of, oh, I remember this, and that's okay. We just kind of feel the feels, allow things to come up, talk them through. But overall, it was amazing. The weather was incredible. I used to live in Vancouver Island, and so the weather was amazing. We got to go to waterfalls and swim in like the fresh, clean water and like be in nature. We're very much nature people, so we love being in nature, which here in Florida, we don't really get to do a whole lot because the nature here is basically like the beach and it's super hot. So we don't get to do those trail walks like with the big giant trees and all that. So we just really soaked it all up, got to connect with family, friends. It was incredible. So yeah, it was a really good time. Yeah, and we probably won't be back for a while though, because it was hella expensive, very expensive. So I'm going to spend that kind of cash, I'm telling you, I'm going to Costa Rica or to see you in Abu Dhabi or somewhere. Not much as I love Canada. No, no.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so that was it. What about you?
Well, we went back to South Africa for 6 weeks. We have a little holiday place in a little village about an hour and a half outside of Cape Town called Hermanus. And it's one of the best land-based whale watching in the world. And so it's very much centered about this little kind of villagey town with beautiful coffee shops and art galleries, and then there's these little kind of the rock hyraxes or whatever they're called. In South Africa, we call them dassies. So these little rock dassies we feed them carrots and they come up to you and we sit and we watch for whales every day and we walk. They've got something called a planet walk where they've got in scale the size of the planets and then the distance between the sun. It starts off with the sun and then the sun is like this big, like quite a big ball, and then you walk however many meters, or like 200 meters, and then you get to the next planet that's like that in comparison to the sun, like a tiny little speck in comparison. And you do this whole planet walk. It goes on for kilometers, and it's so beautiful because it's just the ocean crashing, and you're walking on this path, and then occasionally you come by a planet, and then it's got all interesting facts about the planet. So it's a lot of like outdoor nature based activities. And so we also just use the summer. We don't do any therapies, we don't do any homework, we don't do any summer reading really. Well, my older two have to get some stuff done because they're in 11th and 12th grade, but we generally just be and relax, and the way summers are meant to be, except that South Africa's winter at that time.
Right. I know you were sending me pictures in your like parka. And I was like, oh,
yes, it's winter. And
but
we've actually had the worst weather I've ever experienced over that time, because we go every year. And this year the weather was terrible, but we still had an amazing time. Played some golf with my brother, so it was really fun. Healing.
yeah, healing. That's so good. And you know what? I think you enjoyed that cold. Kind of cozy, wrap yourself up in a blanket, have some coffee, you know.
Yes, we certainly don't get that in Abu Dhabi.
No,
In the summer, you have to like hibernate inside in the air conditioning, and in the winter, it's beautiful, but it's more like summer. You have 25-degree days or whatever, and so the whole of Abu Dhabi comes alive in the winter because everything's outdoors. It's fabulous.
so I came last year in
Yes,
February.
so let's talk about going back to school. So, how do you find the transition of different routine in the summer? No set demands really, and then all of a sudden you're back to having a set bedtime and having to wake up at a certain time and going back to school and getting the kids settled. I mean, you've got four that you have to do that with, or with varying degrees of needs, varying personalities, varying anxieties, and then you have to try and get all of them. And I know that your kids are in different schools, whereas my kids are all at the same school. And I'll talk about one of the strategies that we've put in place. But first, I want to, how was it for you to start back at school with your kids in various school with various needs?
Yeah. Well, I think we did some things beforehand. So I was going through this in my brain this morning as I was having my shower, and I was like, okay, like what are the things? Because sometimes we just do them because we're so used to doing them, and we don't necessarily like break it down in our head. And every year is different, because last year might have been really great because our kids weren't maybe going through so much hormones, and this year they're going through more hormones. So it's a bit different, right? So this year, the big thing we try to do is go and do the meet and greet. So every year at the school, they have like this welcome event where you can go, bring your child, they meet the teacher, they get a lay of the land of the new class, but figure out where everything is, maybe make a couple new friends, like introduce yourself to a couple of the other families that are there that are going to be in the same class. So my youngest, who is going into grade 4, we did that with him this year. Now, you know what it's like being expat. You're moving at different times of the year. Last year we were a month late at coming to school, so we didn't get to do any of that. And it was hard. It was hard to just kind of go into the school year like with everything already happening. I think you're frozen. I'm not sure.
Oh, sorry, my internet just froze for uh, 10 seconds. So, but yes, carry on.
Okay. So we went to the meet and greet with the teacher. That was really great. And I just put eyes on the teacher, and I just said, hey, I don't know if you read my son's file, but he has dyslexia. He's high functioning autism. I'll, and she didn't have much time, but I basically just said, I will send you an email with some of his diagnoses and some of the strategies that we've been successful with within him. And she was super receptive to that. She actually said, one of my kids is a little bit neurodiverse, so I totally get it. So that was really nice. That's one of the things we did. We also did that with my daughter, who was going into a new high school. We went to the welcome, thing. We met all the teachers. And I think for those two in particular, like that really calmed down a lot of their anxiety about what to expect. And it really, really, really helped. The second thing, I think so I'll just start by saying we had, I feel, a very successful start to a school year, considering all of my kids started in new schools this year. Except for Milo, my youngest. Sorry, Milo. I'll say Milo. It's fine. I don't mind. So yeah, so I do think it was really successful, and I feel like the meet and greet was a big part of that. The second thing was developing the routine. So we started a few days before, like kind of the week before, we started with the routine of, this is what time we're going to get up in the morning. I do like a breakfast schedule because food is really triggering for my kids, especially my youngest. If he doesn't know what he's eating for breakfast in the morning, for some reason, I have no idea why, he gets like super anxious. Like he can't even handle the thought of like, what do you want for breakfast in the morning? That question is like so triggering for him that it could lead to school refusal.
That's a great point, because when you said that, it just dawned on me as well that I don't know what I want, and then can trigger into a fight. Yes. Whereas if I just made the breakfast, or we know what we're going to have before, that's a really, really good point, and something that I should add into my routine. Already have, this is what we're going to have for breakfast tomorrow. So thank you. I'm noting that point, because I've just dawned on me that that's actually something that does trigger more of an anxiety response.
Yeah. It's such a random thing that I really recognized it last year, and it frustrated me at first because I'm like, hey, these are all these great options. I've narrowed the options down, but it just was still too much for him. So we decide beforehand what's for breakfast. And he loves crepes, so of course that's a bit more effort on my part. But if that makes him happy in the morning, it's high protein, it's got lots of eggs. I usually put a tiny bit of fruit if he can tolerate that on the side. And that is something that just makes his morning happy. He knows what to expect. He enjoys the food. And then he can just go get dressed and do the few things that he has to do. I make it as limited as possible. Like, he's not able to pack his lunch either. Even asking him, what kind of granola bar would you like for your snack? Like this one or this one is too much for him. So I just have as much things ready to go in the morning as I can. I often don't even ask him to brush his teeth. I will ask him to brush his teeth after school instead of in the morning, even though he might, go to school with dirty teeth. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to get him there in the calmest way possible so he can engage in learning. And so just knowing those things, like taking those pressures off, and it's allowing yourself to not feel shame about that. Like, okay, I'm sending my kid to school without toothbrush. Like, oh, well, yeah, he might be wearing mismatched socks, but at least he put the socks on his feet. Because if I tell him, hey, go change your socks, they're not matching, that could lead to a big meltdown. So it's like, I think for us as moms, and for me in particular, knowing what you're going to, lowering the standards, letting the small things go, and celebrating the wins. Those are kind of my go-to things for a successful start to school. Being prepared, getting them into a routine, meet the teacher, and then just making that the first few weeks like as positive as possible by completely highlighting the wins and ignoring the losses. Don't bring them up. It is literally not worth it. It puts such a negative spin for the kids, like all of that stuff. So it's just highlighting, wow, you put your socks on, amazing. Don't even bring up the fact that one's blue and one's red. Who cares? Like, If he decides at one point, I don't want to wear mismatched socks because someone might tease me at school, well, then that's his choice. But for us, we have to just pour in the praise and the positive, make them feel successful for the things that they are doing. And then later on in the school year, like once things are in a trucking along, maybe add in wearing matching socks or doing some morning care, brushing your teeth, those little things. So yeah, so that's it for me. The things that I do, I try. My kids have an Alexa in their room. That's another thing, is they have a hard time getting up, and so when I put them to bed at night, when I go and say goodnight to them, I make sure that their Alexa is set for a wake up call, with a song that they like to hear at a volume that is going to annoy them, and it's set far away from their bed. That's another thing we incorporated last year. And I think that's because I would always have to go up. And I know you struggled with this too. And it's like, okay, like it's time to wake up, like get out of bed. It's 5 minutes to go. And it can just like, you're like, every morning I have to do this. Like, and it frustrates you because then you're going late to school and then they're getting a bad start to their day. And then you're signing them in. And it's just like this whole thing. So that little Alexa device can be an amazing thing in the mornings. And Milo has a favorite song that he plays. So he plays his little favorite jam in the morning, and it like kind of
What is it?
It's a little groove going in the morning, which is super cute. So
what's his favorite song?
Oh, it's called My Lighthouse. It's
okay.
by Ren Collective.
Yes.
It's a Christian song, but yeah, it's just like a upbeat little jam, and he really loves it. So yeah.
My youngest favorite song at the moment is the one from Despicable Me 4. It's called Double Life. I think it's by Pharrell Williams. It's like, who will group be tonight? That's the question. And we have to listen to it in the car on repeat. Anyway, no, I mean, those were
on the way to school. That's another good point.
Yeah.
Music really set a tone for these kids.
100%. I think those are really, really good ideas and points, and to implement into the morning routine.
Yeah.
And we have like similar strategies that we employ.
Yeah.
But
I'll add one more thing that we do.
Yep.
I don't do it the first few weeks as much, but you could, is having a tracker. You know, one of the things that really frustrated me is like, have you done this, or have you done that, or did you eat your breakfast? And I would just find myself on repeat because I have the 4 children, and I do have to ask all 4 of them, even my 17-year-old, they have 2 or 3 of them have braces now. So it's like, oh, do you have your elastics in your braces? I'm more vigilant with the older ones on teeth, not so much my younger, because they have the braces, so they have to, care for them. But it's like, okay, have you done your checklist? So then I'm not saying like, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done this? I'm just like, oh, are you ready to go? Is your checklist done? And that's all I say. And then if they can handle that, then it's nice because I don't have to be like this Charlie Brown mother, Martha. So that's another little tip, is like having a tracker for them so that you don't have to be like always nagging at them. Is your homework done? Well, you want your electronic time? You can do it after school too. Have you done your teeth? Have you done your homework? Or you don't want to say all that all the time. It's just, do your checklist, and then, technology is all yours, whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, those are excellent strategies. For me, it's very triggering. So our last year in England was, my youngest had 6 months without a school because we couldn't find him a school that would suit his needs. Then the council found him a school, and he was one of 30 kids. He did not have any help in the classroom. So his needs were not being met at school, essentially. So, and he had such the anxiety and the trauma of leaving his previous school. And so it was a very traumatic time for both of us and for the whole family, really. And then he was having an attendance rate of like 75%. And I fought with him, and we tried everything, and he wouldn't go to school one day a week, at least. Um, and at least two of the other days he would be late. I'd have to take him for breakfast first to kind of calm down his anxiety and get him dressed to get out the door. We'd have to go to a restaurant for breakfast, and then once we got there, then it's 5 minutes from the walk from the school, and then that 5 minutes walk could take 20 to 30 minutes to actually get him in the door. And it was a horrible time for all of us, which was one of the reasons why we came here to Abu Dhabi, where we could pay to have a learning support assistant in the school with him, and we can put in place with the school strategies and things in place to have his needs met, so that he's not so anxious going to school. So that was a game changer, having him in the right environment where his needs are being met. Now, that doesn't miraculously just fix everything. He still has his anxieties, and he still has his learning difficulties, etc., etc. So we were blown away last year, because we've been here a year now. So how we had just arrived in a new country. It had such a traumatic year before. We were blown away that last year he had a attendance rate of 95% or something. He was sick a couple of days. He might have had a anxiety day off here or there. But it really was a hugely positive experience last year, and then this year we've started running into problems again. So, but the strategies that we're trying to put into place is, for example, last year I took all the boys to school, and because my older boys are at the pointy end of high school, they have to be at school on time, which created a lot more stress and demands in the morning to get my youngest into the car at the right time to be able to take the other kids to school. And some days I would have to take them to school and then come back to fetch my youngest, if he was then kind of able to get over himself and his anxieties to get into the car and go to school. So this year what we've done is we've put them on the bus. So the two older boys get on the bus at 6:45, and then we have to leave at 7:15 in order to get to school on time. So that's taken away a lot of the demands, and it's just quiet time in the morning, and that has helped us a lot. So, but your idea of like having a breakfast already made and then just putting it in front of him, I think is a great idea, or discussing the night before what we're going to have breakfast tomorrow. I think that's something that I'm going to add in from tomorrow as an extra tool. So that's the one strategy we've put into place. Another strategy is that the year that, if you've listened to previous podcasts of ours, I call the the terrible, horrible year, is very traumatic and triggering for both of us. And we used to fight every morning, and it was so traumatic for me, like that I would manage to get him to school or not, and then that was me for the rest of the day. I was so traumatized and so emotionally exhausted that like I'm useless for the rest of the day, because I've had this huge fight with my child. And so now what I've done is it's all his choice. Okay, so he knows that if he doesn't go to school, it's his choice. I don't scream and shout at him. It's his choice, but he has no access to any electronics that day. And so sometimes his anxiety is deeper or more than his want for electronics, which is his safe place. And so sometimes I just need to just come to terms with that. And then he has to come to terms with that. And usually, if things are really, really bad, we only have a day of that. And then he's so desperate for his electronics. So the next day, he kind of pushes past that so that he can go back to school and get his electronics. This year, I don't know. For some reason, he's struggling again. Last week, we had 2 days he didn't go to school, and we think that's maybe because he's really struggling in one of his classes, in Arabic class. And I'm in constant contact with the school about what we can do to help him. Maybe they're giving him different work to the other kids, but I think the act of going into the class and being different from the other kids is one of his triggers. So we're working around, maybe he can still learn Arabic, but in the library with his learning assistant, rather than being in the class where it's glaringly obvious he's not keeping up with the other kids. We're also exploring petitioning to the ADEC, which is the Abu Dhabi Educational and Knowledge Group, to exempt him from learning Arabic, because it's impacting on his willingness and his nervous system and being able to learn his other subjects. So if he's shutting down because of this triggering subject, which is not essential to his life skills, he shouldn't be put in that position where he's so shut down that he can't actually learn English and maths and science, because he's actually quite good in those subjects. So these are things that we've got to work in with the school. So again, when it was like the back to school time and we could go and meet the teachers, that's too traumatic for him. So he doesn't go on that day, but I go and I meet the teachers and I lay it on thick, and I tell them, like, worst case scenario, that I don't know if he's going to come to school. We try, and I think a very important thing is to have a good, open relationship, honest relationship with all the people at the school that will be involved in your child's education. So, I mean, I'm on first name basis with the head of inclusion, and I'm not sure if she likes me or sees me in the morning and go, oh my goodness, here she is again, because I have 3 children with different needs. So, and she's the head of inclusion, so I talk to her at least 2-3 times a week. I pop my head into her office. So that's so important that you're on each other's side, that she's on your side and you're on her side, because you both really want a good education for your child and you want your child to be happy at school. And so you want that. It's so important that you have this good relationship with the inclusion staff, with the teacher, and so I go in there and I really lay it on thick, and I say, these are all his needs, and I let them know, all of them, that once he's come to school, it's been a 2-hour process already, that we've had to get over the anxiety of going to school. We've had to get over, and now they've got turf, the fake grass stuff. And when we went last year, it was fine. It was just a fake grass. But apparently, when it wears down, there's more injuries during sports time. So they throw these, these rubber or pellets all over it. These little black ball pellets, which is meant to make it more springy. And then as time goes by, it's soaks into the turf, and then it's more scrunchy, so there's less injuries. But these little pellets get into my son's shoes, and that's a huge sensory trigger for him. So so now I've had to go around. It's easier to go around the back of the school and walk across the fields, which cuts off about 10 minutes of the process of getting to school. But now we more consistently late, because now when I do get him into school, I have to go around the front where all the traffic is, because he can't walk across that. But he does walk across that on the way home in the bus. So he often comes home with the little pebbles in his shoes. So in the morning, sometimes I forget to completely shake out his shoes, or I shake them out and there's still one inside. And then we've gotten through this whole process of getting him ready for school. We're at the front door. He's sitting there and I help him put his shoes on, and he starts walking out the front door, and there's one of these little pellets in his shoes, and that can set us back anything from 5 minutes to 2 hours to he's not going to school that day because of the sensory trigger of that. And that's like things that I bring up to the school and stuff like that. So I think open communication and making sure that your school knows that with school refusers, that just getting them to school is such a process that your child has had to go through, that it's not just, oh yeah, la la la, let's just go to school. And I think that communication has helped a lot. And I think this year, because we're running into problems again, I think because of the Arabic lessons and then the sensory issues of the pebbles in the back playground or whatever, sports field. I've now realized that last year was spent getting everybody used to being in a new country. Last year was spent, let me just move out of the sun a little bit, yeah. Last year was spent like setting up therapies like OT and speech and language and things like that. But I think now it's become quite apparent that I have to find some sort of talk therapist or play therapist for him, to that we can start speaking to him about like what is triggering these things. And the things that were working last year are not working as effectively this year, so now we have to get another level of help. The problem is being an expat in a new country is, to find somebody that aligns with your values, someone that's neuro-affirming, not going to kind of just try and kind of like manipulate him into going. Somebody that can really try and get to the bottom of it and try and get to the bottom of his anxiety, rather than the goal of getting him to go to school, if you know what I mean. So that's where I am now, realizing that this year seems to be a little bit trickier than last year as going to school, and realizing that we've got to engage with the school counselors, which we started today actually with him, and then also actually find a psychologist or play therapist or someone that can help talk to him. That's not me. That's not his teachers. That kind of can gain his trust and do a little digging of like why he's feeling that way.
That's awesome. I think I want to highlight something that you shared, which I think will really help some parents out there. And that is, like when you were saying, I talk to the teachers and I lay it on thick. I tell them, worst case scenario, this is going to happen. And, I think we've highlighted that in other podcast episodes on when we're picking a school and when we're interviewing for a school. But just to reiterate it again, because it's so easy, I think, if you're a people pleaser like I am, and you want to just appear like, we all want to appear, put our best foot forward. But like, I think it's so important that we are very honest with these teachers and telling them exactly the struggles that our child has and not sugarcoating things, because I think you've said it in the past, if someone tells you who they are, believe them. So if your teacher then says to you, well, as you're talking to them, like, you're going to know, like, right away, like, this teacher is not going to be a good fit for my child. There's no point of traumatizing them and me by putting my child in this person's class if they right away are showing you like they are not up for supporting your child. And I think that's so, so, so key in having a successful experience for them at school. And it can be annoying because, you are going to meet those people that really don't have a heart for your child and don't want to bother listening to you, or, you know what I'm saying?
It's
So
heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking when
yeah,
people put your child into the too hard basket, and you know there's such potential and they're such lovely kids, and they struggle with this or that, but if you put the time and effort in, the results are beautiful and amazing, and there's so much potential there, but it has to be unlocked by the right people, which
yeah,
goes into my saying that I reiterate almost every
yeah,
podcast, is that children are like flowers. If
yeah,
they are wilting, it's not their fault, it's their environment. If they put in the right environment for them, they will thrive. And that's, so we have to, as parents, that's our job, to find the right environment that will bring out the potential in our children. And as I've said before, as expats, we're very dynamic people. We're moving to new countries. We're tough. We put in these situations where we have to find new specialists, new doctors, new dentists, new hairdressers, new everything, and new friends, new support systems. And we do it, and it's part of our experience. And there's really, really tough things about being an expat, but there's really amazing rewards about being an expat, and I think that goes with our kids as well. So it's really tough to find the right environment for them, but the rewards are amazing when you do find the right environment for them.
and I think too, like obviously, I think we're mainly talking about kids like in elementary school. When the kids get into high school, you're not obviously going to be able to speak to every single teacher all the time
Oh,
because
I
they're
do. I'm that mother.
what?
I'm that mother. I do. I tell
How
them,
they're
I'm like, my child is autistic. And when you send an email, like generic email, that's, like it's not specific enough. And then they spend the next week obsessing about what it is you actually mean. And they make themselves so sick with anxiety that, please, in future emails to my child, can you clarify exactly when A is due, when B is due, etc., etc. Oh, I'm that parent. I speak to every teacher.
I think that in some schools you can do that. My daughter goes to a public school and the teachers are just not that accessible. I
Yeah.
think that if I went out hunting for a teacher, I would definitely be able to contact one. But I think as they grow older, you're more putting out fires,
Hmm.
oftentimes rather than going in and saying, like, this is what because when they're younger, they can't advocate so much for themselves. But
Yeah.
as my children getting older, I'm teaching them to kind of advocate more for themselves because they are the one that sees that teacher every day face to face and go
Yeah.
speak to the teacher after school. And sometimes we'll go over, like, say, tell them that you have auditory processing disorder. And so if if the teacher, for instance, my daughter, she has auditory processing disorder. So her teacher was just lecturing for like, you know, 40 minutes of this class. And she's just like sitting there going like, and then at the end of the class, it's like, oh, and this is your assignment. And she just couldn't like, she's like, I forgot what he was saying like 5 minutes after he started talking. Like I just couldn't concentrate. And I'm like, well, okay, so we need to go in and talk to him and say, like, this is my struggle. It's in her file. And it's like, ask if you could record his talks so that you can go back over them and, pull out the main points, make notes on that. See what he can do to help you. And so she did, and it ended up being so positive. And she was empowered because she's like, I advocated for myself. I actually shared out loud what my struggle is, which she's quite embarrassed about it. She doesn't like to like talk about it. So that it was very empowering for her to be able to share it to her teacher and actually have the teacher support her in that and affirm her in that and figure out an accommodation together. And so just setting her up because she wants to go to university and just she's going to have to learn how to do these things, right? So anyways, so that is so amazing, Dahlia. One other thing you didn't quickly bring up was someone coming in to say hello. Oh, I can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry. One of my kids just coming home from school. It's fine.
Oh, nice, nice.
I was just telling him to close the door.
Oh, I love
I do have
it.
signs up outside saying podcast recording in progress. Please do not enter. But
Oh, here.
apparently, my 16-year-old can't read.
Oh, well. Um,
Yeah, sorry,
it's
you were saying one thing I didn't bring up.
don't mind the interruptions because this is real life. We're just
Yeah.
moms
Yeah.
doing whatever. We're not professionals. Or do we play?
Absolutely, absolutely. Nobody heard my youngest having a meltdown about 10 minutes ago.
Oh, I like how you're turning your mic up and down. Great. The other thing you didn't talk about, which I thought was super good that you and I talked about, was the book of like bringing in a reward system, something that is motivating to our children just to get them going into a routine, right? Because like once they're going after a few weeks, if they've had, so many wins, it's easier for them to continue to go. And so sometimes you need to just get that ball rolling with like a good incentive
Yes,
gift, right? Or some points that they can earn things. And that can work some years and not work other years, which,
100%.
but can you talk a little bit about that reward
Yes.
system?
So what we've put in place is like my son wants a gaming chair that costs 1,000 dirham. So
Which is not that much.
which is
Just
um probably about 200 pounds, say, approximately. Um,
1,000.
and so what we've made is like a reward chart, and then we never take off points. So there's never like punishment if he doesn't do these things. Um, but and we've got like categories. We've got easy, we've got medium, and we've got hard, and we've got like very hard, and then we've got like impossible. So we've got easy is like listening to instructions. If we say, come, let's go put jammies on, let's go to the toilet, or like all those kind of simple everyday prompts, if he does them straight away, he just gets a point. Then like five, then we've got 5 points for medium. So if he does a task like he struggles with going to having a shower or bath and things like that. So if he goes to have a shower and brushes his teeth and things like that, we give him 5 points, because those are tasks that are a little bit harder for him to comply with. Those are demands that are a bit harder. And it used to be 5 points for going to school, but because we're struggling, we've put that up to 10 points. So just going to school gets him 10 points. Then taking the bus home from school, which he has to do because I don't go pick him up. So, but just the fact of going to school, he gets now 20 points just by going to school. And then if he does things like that are really tough for him, then we give him like 25. Like I've offered him like 50 points if he gets on the bus to school. That hasn't happened so far, but the option's there for him should he choose. And then like I took him to the dentist and he was so good that I gave him like a 50-point bonus and things like that, like if he really struggles with writing. So if he writes or he does amazing on a spelling test, like he's quite good at spelling. So even with no homework, I don't know how anybody feels about homework, but I tell the teachers straight, we don't do homework. We work on toileting skills. We work on hygiene skills. We work on self-regulation at home. These are skills we work on at home. We don't do homework at home. That's something that,
with the elementary school.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, older kids, in order to in high school, in order to pass the exams, and if they're in a mainstream school, then they have to pass the exams. Exactly. I mean, my youngest is 10, so we're still working on those, and I know he'll get there in the end. But at the moment, they're at school 8 hours. It's a long day here. They start school at like 7:45 and they finish at 3 p.m. So it's a long day. And then by the time they get home, they're exhausted from the whole thing. And so at home, it's, as I said, we work on those other skills. And so, but the point system works really, really well. And it's not like a reward and punishment. If he doesn't do it, again, I don't like make a big deal out of it. And but he knows he gets to make the choice and feel like he's in control whether he's going to do those things. And I like the way you said, because it often happens in our household as well, about if he goes to school without brushing his teeth, like my husband's horrified if he doesn't brush his teeth. But like, you've got to pick your battles and work with anxiety and the demands, especially as my son is PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance, which normal everyday demands that neurotypical people or people without PDA experience is we get up and shower and brush our teeth and put our clothes on. But for them, those demands can actually make them so paralyzed that they don't get out of bed because they just can't bring themselves to do it. And the demands of everyday life is sometimes too overwhelming for their sensory system. And so people that have studied it have said it's a nervous system disorder, and it's this whole fight or flight or freeze, this whole cortisol and just getting into. They liken it to PTSD. These kids get so triggered and their nervous system shuts down, and it's just all too much for them if you carry on with the demand. So, I mean, we can do a whole other podcast on that.
Yeah.
I like the way when we're talking, we think of like at least 10 different podcasts that we can do stemming from whatever we're discussing in each podcast.
So that's really good, Delia. And I think we've offered our audience and people listening, if there's some tips or tricks that have worked well for you, like put them in the comments on our Facebook. Follow us on NeuroNomads on Facebook and on our YouTube channel, and let us know what's worked for you, because we're all learning and we need to share with each other to succeed here, and we want our kids to do the best. So please feel free to share with us some things that have worked well for you as well. But what I'll say just to conclude is that, Delia, you said something really important, that when you went through that Terry Ho year, the terrible, horrible year, that you've needed to do a lot of self-care now to kind of, as a mother, be able to be the best person and show up for your child. And I think during back to school week, especially leading up to back to school, and maybe the few weeks in the first month, maybe let's just say, of back to school, as parents, we need to recognize that we're going to be under a lot of stress. So we need to be careful about what we're taking on, cut back on our workload, maybe cut back on things that keep us super, super busy so that we have that downtime. Like, maybe if we're going out, we have activities in the evenings, maybe don't do those activities that week so that we can get to bed on time and, watch our little episode on TV, the things that have a nice bath, the things that make us calm to be able to handle maybe a challenging possible week for our children. And I think that's something that sometimes we overlook in ourselves, that we set the tone for our children too. So it's our responsibility to take care of ourselves and make sure we're not overtasking ourselves by being too busy. So yeah, I know for me, like I cut back on work, my work, like I had some projects that I needed to do, but I just was able to push those off and just be like, okay, well, I will just catch up on those like the following week, and just allow myself extra time, making sure I'm doing my exercise routine, drinking lots of water, simple things like that, taking 5 minutes to journal or read that little book that I love, sit out in the sunshine for 10 minutes, and just kind of these
Such
are intentional
good advice.
And they're simple things that can totally change our personal ability to be there for our children and families and show up too, right? So we'll just conclude to say, we got to take care of ourselves, mama and papas, so that we can be there for these children, because they need us. And
Absolutely.
That's hard. It's a hard job. It's a time job.
I've learned some good tips from you, and and it definitely will add some of those into our routine. And I totally agree with you on the self-care. And it with my son starting to school refuse a little bit this year again, it's very triggering to me, and it takes me back to that. And I don't ever want to go back to the amount of stress I was under that year. So yeah, thank you. These are therapy sessions. They're not even. It's not even a podcast.
Your rose-colored glasses. Celebrate the win.
Well, I've just got my normal glasses so that I can see.
It's okay to ignore the bad stuff. Just focus on the positive. Good. On our glasses.
Oh,
I don't think actually. That's not
no, it's good. It's good too, because life is rosy. Life's amazing, and being having the expat experience is like no other experience I've ever had, and it's just amazing. But it comes with the hard stuff, but the rewards are completely worth it.
yeah. Okay, love
Thank
you,
you for
girl.
the therapy session. Love you.
Talk to you guys later.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.